Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Focus Friday. And today I have with me my fiance, Sean Cooley, who is an MD and in his last few weeks of becoming a cardiac trained anesthesiologist. So Sean, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So this week's topic is all on COVID, and then we'll branch in a little bit to what we could potentially do to support our immune system. But first question right out of the gates that I have is in relation to COVID and if anybody or if you personally thought that this would extend this long. I remember back in March, I personally thought that it would be like 2 weeks and it would blow over. What was your initial thoughts on what COVID, like how long it was going to be, how severe it was going to be?
Yeah, so I think it was interesting because you would hear from so many different people that this is just going to be something short term, or this is going to take us all the way into the fall. And initially, I was more on the party of, it might take us into June, maybe. I was thinking as soon as summer came around, things would sort of blow over. And then some of the early models, they were predicting us to, peak in July. And I just was thinking, like, how was that even possible? Which wasn't necessarily turning out to be how it played out. But I think there was just so many different scenarios that it could have gone with. And so I was sort of more of the conservative thinking, or more of the, thinking that it was only going to last until maybe late spring, early summer. But I know there were some people who, and now are, being in more correct, saying that it's going to last longer than we initially thought. So yeah, to roundabout way of answering your question, nobody really knew, and
Yeah.
I was optimistic right away, and still am optimistic, but clearly we're still in the mix of things. So
Right. So in the sense of like what you and in the medical community think about and I know like there's news reports saying like, okay, we have no idea, or at least that's what it's shown in the media. Is there anything that you think like that you could tell us in terms of like how long like should we prepare to be doing this? Or again, is it kind of one of those things like we hear on the media, like nobody knows and we just have
Right.
to kind of buckle up and we're in it for the long haul?
Yeah, I think it's really easy to set yourself up for, um, false hope if you think that it's going to end too soon. But it's also naive to think that, it's going to be, done soon as well. So I would just prepare to take us in through the summer into the fall, and sort of reassess at that point. But I mean, clearly it's not something that's just going to go away this summer.
Right. So, and I know that we can't talk about specific cases that you see at the University of Minnesota, but would you say that your caseload with COVID specific patients is high at the university, or is that not a hospital where you're seeing a lot of those types of patients?
Yeah, so they in Minneapolis here, they have a designated place for patients with COVID. They don't want to cross contaminate with patients who are getting other procedures, so they try to limit the exposure to all of us at the university, anyways, and most other hospitals in Minneapolis. So the only time we really ever will see a COVID patient come in for surgery is if it's an emergency surgery that nobody knew the patient had COVID. We're testing everybody, so everybody, takes anybody who comes in for an emergency surgery is a patient under investigation, is what we call it, and so we treat everybody like they have it until they're proven not to. Which is why all of our scheduled cases, they have to have testing done before they get the procedure, to rule that out, so that we don't accidentally cause an outbreak in the hospital. So the hospital takes all its precautions. So
Yeah.
To answer your question on COVID specific patients, we don't see really any,
Okay.
just a few, when they come through. So
Has there been any word from like you or, other people that you've gone to school with? I know that you've got some people that were in your residency program last year who are kind of scattered around the country. Has there been any like general consensus about like it really does hit specific populations very like differently? And has there been any theme, or is it like it just person by person, like your genetic makeup is going to determine how you respond? Or
yeah. So if you look at the vast majority of the patients, it's initially what they had said. It's patients with comorbidities. particularly obesity, hypertension, if they were smokers, things like that. And then there's always going to be outliers, just as you see with anything. So in my small experience with dealing with patients with COVID, I've seen only healthy and otherwise, pretty healthy patients. But then you look at the areas where a lot of the patients with COVID are at here in the cities. And although I haven't been there, I've heard that the vast majority of them are obese and, in the older age population. But then again, that doesn't mean that people like you or I
Yep.
aren't still vulnerable, but there's still plenty of cases of people just like you and I who have done very poorly with the disease. But the vast majority are plagued by comorbidities such as hypertension and obesity.
Okay, so in the sense of what you know about those who have had COVID and then have since recovered, could they at that point still pass it on to others?
I don't think it's really known at this point. The thought process is that the contamination or the window that you can give it to another person is past, and that your body's immune system should theoretically sort of keep it at bay until your body sort of fights off the infection. If you're not actively shedding virus and transmitting it, then theoretically you shouldn't be transmitting it to other people.
Yeah.
And that's true of any respiratory virus. And so it's thought that it acts in similar ways, and there's no reason to believe that it doesn't. But again, the research isn't out yet on that because, it's still a pretty new, this specific strain is pretty new still. And so the medical community is not going to make any claims without backing it, which is special about the medical community, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, I was just thinking of, even when you said that, like I had mono at one point when I was a junior in college. And it's my understanding that Epstein-Barr virus, or EBV, is something that would, like if I were to test, it would say that I had it.
You would have an antibody towards it. It wouldn't necessarily mean that you would have active antigens shedding the virus, though.
Right. That means I'm not
contagious.
Yeah. Like I couldn't give it to you, but it would show that I had it at one point.
Yep.
Okay. So another thing I wanted to bring up is I've seen this across the different areas in the Twin Cities, where if I go downtown, if I'm in South Minneapolis, if I'm in just close to like the metro area, I'm seeing that there are a lot of people who are very diligent about wearing their masks.
Mm-hmm.
I still see a lot of people when we go out, like you and I get takeout, like there's, a few people that are eating outside, but it still seems like the general consensus is wear your mask, take out, like social distance. But then there's, maybe the surrounding areas, like we were out in Wayzata or Plymouth, not calling anybody out, but we see a different kind of maybe feeling where I go into places and there's really no masks being worn. So what are your thoughts? Is a mask truly necessary, and do we need to continue wearing one for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, you take 99 occurrences, you can say 99 people that don't wear a mask, and one person, maybe gets infected. I think it's one of those things, though, where, maybe you can cut that down to, or I'm sorry, if you are wearing a mask, maybe one person gets infected. If you're not wearing a mask, maybe, 25% of patients could get infected if you're an asymptomatic carrier of it. These are just arbitrary numbers. There's nothing behind them. But my point is that I think it's really the cost benefit, or the risk benefit, or the benefit to risk ratio outweighs of wearing a mask outweighs not wearing a mask, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's easy to do. It doesn't cost you really anything to do it. The potential to protect yourself and others. I mean, I think it's just sort of one of those things, like it's silly in this day and age not to, at least until, there's further evidence not to, or there's more convincing appeal to do it or not. I think it's really unfortunate, and I'm not always the best at this either. I try to wear my mask whenever I'm out anywhere, but there's times where I'll forget it up in our apartment or down in the car. and even just traveling back and forth, and you sort of feel like I should have my mask on right now. But it's really easy for people to sort of just think that the wave of the virus is over. The majority of the people, the numbers are going down, and less people are dying each day from it, and they sort of think they're out of the woods. But I would caution anybody to still stay on the safe side. I mean, it's not costing you anything, and it's potentially saving someone. So
right. Anything else specific that you could tell somebody, like besides wearing a mask, like, yeah, washing your hands is great. Social distancing. Is there anything we're forgetting besides those like top 3 things that you can think of? And that's okay if you don't have an answer. But.
Yeah, no, I think it's just general hygiene in general. So wearing a mask, like you mentioned, washing your hands. If you're out and about looking at groceries or anywhere else, or if you touch a handle of something that's public, just making sure you're not bringing it to your face or bringing it to somewhere that you could potentially, then give yourself an exposure.
Right.
So it's really just comes down to basic hygiene. If you're looking at groceries, don't pick things up and read them and put them back. Somebody does that a lot. Or if you're going into a public place, just try to be mindful of social distancing as well as what am I touching, and then if I touch something, I better be buying this, because otherwise there's really no reason to be touching anything. You see a lot of people. I'm not going to call you out on this, but you grab something, read the ingredients or whatever it is, put it back, grab the next thing, read the ingredients, put it back, and then now you're just potentially, contracting or spreading.
Right.
So just keeping those things in mind, and then whenever you get back, I recommend having some sort of a sanitation, whether when you're leaving wherever you're at or in your car.
Will that blow up in your car?
Yeah, that's unlikely, but especially not in Minnesota.
Okay, so it's not hot enough.
Well, it'd have to be pretty hot in a sealed container with, a full bottle of.
Okay, so if there's a pump on it and it's like halfway full, like we have an ours.
It should not explode.
Okay.
But that's one of the things that people are like, oh, the hand sanitizer is going to blow up in my car, and there's a risk for everything. So.
Right, and it is in the news. Like there has been things, but I mean those are extreme cases, like Texas when it's like 150 degrees.
Right.
Okay, so last question I have for you. So this is related to immune system. So Alex and I talk about immune system all the time. Again, there is several studies that have been put out that specific supplements can help. And we don't have to go deep into the supplement talk, but is there anything like from a behavioral standpoint that in your opinion, or even just in general medical community consensus, anything that's really good for immune system?
Yeah. So what's really stressed in the medical community, we and again, I'm not in the field of pushing anything on anybody, but if you can sleep well, if you can have regular exercise, a good well-rounded diet, talking about vitamin D being beneficial as well for immune health, and then there's all sorts of different things that you can do, but really you need to, taking all the supplements in the world or taking all the, vitamins in the world really do nothing if you don't have a good foundation, which is your good sleep, your regular exercise, and a well-rounded diet, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
So, you can supplement immune health things, but if you don't have a good foundation, it's really sort of really not going to be worth anything.
Totally. Yeah. No, absolutely. So. Thank you. That was helpful.
Yeah.
And would you say, last little caveat to that, exercise, any benefit to like, is cardio more important than strength? Is being outside, obviously away from people, better than in? Does it matter? Is it more of just like getting those endorphins?
I think from an immune system, I think endurance aerobic activity is probably better for your immune system than
go triathlon.
Yeah, than like lifting weights. You get a lot of it's really when it comes down to how your body can function. Aerobic or cellular respiration. Again, getting into the dorky stuff, but what's really healthy for your cells is to aerobically be stressed. So not to necessarily anaerobically. I mean, it's important to anaerobically stress your body as well, but when in terms of a good
That
immune
means really hard, basically.
right. In terms of a really good immune system, I would say aerobic would probably outweigh anaerobic, or like
In
vigorous.
nature, like heals everything. Like personally, like if I mean, is there a day that you have spent outside in the sun and you don't feel great?
No.
Right?
Yep.
So that is all that we wanted to talk about. If there are specific questions that you have about COVID-related things, Alex and I would be happy to comment more on those things, maybe grab some really smart folks and chat with them too. But general consensus is that we are trying to know more. Still seems like there's a lot that we don't know, but doing the good things for yourself, like, washing your hands, wearing a mask, getting good sleep, drinking water.
Yeah.
Good.
Hydration.
Good, well-rounded diet.
Yep.
Whatever that means for you. Again, that's why you can talk to Alex and I too. But thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
I'd give you a kiss, but I'll keep it PG.
Yep. Stay safe out there.
Okay. Bye, guys.